You're watching Soul Sisters on Pure Soul, powered by Isaac Hayes on Dash Radio.
Hi.
Hey.
Welcome our guest.
What is
Came
up?
back. How are
You didn't realize she was gonna be back so soon, huh?
huh?
No, didn't. Well, you know, things happen.
Yes, they do. So outside of, I kind of want to get to the reaction of men,
right,
as it pertains to Will defending her. But let me just ask you, in that moment, what did you think about what happened?
You know, like everyone else, you think it's a joke. I mean, because what's the chances of something like that being real? So you just assume at first. It wasn't until he sat down and started dropping F-bombs that I said, oh, wait, they don't do that on.
Right.
Okay, all right. I guess it must be real. So then, you know, all right, so something's up. Once that happened and I saw Chris react and the room get quiet and the sequence of events and everything begin, my initial response, first and foremost, was I wish it didn't happen. The whole thing, the joke, the slap, the everything. I just wish the whole thing, didn't happen. And it's not like, I keep hearing people say, oh, they did that in front of these white folks. I'm not even thinking about white folks. I'm thinking about for us. In that moment, it was such a good, potentially great moment for so many people. Questlove, Will, Chris, it was just such a good moment for so many people. But give it a second, and I understood the sequence of events. People, I've been watching Will appear to get to this point for at least a good year or two. Certainly within the last year, some of the crying spells, talking about his book, bringing up issues from his childhood, just all these things that have been marching up to this moment. And believe me, I had a bunch of brothers, like everybody, married and single, blowing up my line, talking about it. Yeah. And you don't know when somebody's, had enough. I don't think that Will was defending Jada. I don't think that. I think that Will was defending little Willard Smith. And Jada happened to be the median through which he was able to do that in that moment. I think that in that moment, Chris Rock represented, I'm not saying that Chris Rock was his dad, but represented a certain force, a certain energy that Will Smith saw as a challenge, a thing to remember. This is the same guy that went skydiving. He's always pushing himself to show his bravery, to show his courage, and pushing his limits to find new ways to manifest this thing that was buried so deep inside that he couldn't tap into when he was younger. And in this moment, I think the entire Academy, everyone's talking about, oh, you're at the Oscars. I think the Oscars disappeared. Everyone else in the room disappeared. The lights, the cameras, and it was just him having tunnel vision in that moment. And at Chris Rock, who was no longer Chris Rock. Chris Rock was more of a symbol of a thing that he needed to overcome in that moment. And there was a thing that he needed to do to prove to himself that he had arrived. Because the same little boy who stood frozen watching his father beat his mom and feel like he failed her in that moment because he couldn't do anything and try to get over that for the rest of his life. He was trying to get back that moment and be a defender. But it was really more about proving his worth, his value, that he wasn't a coward. And everything disappeared at that point. The money, the fame, everything disappeared at that moment. And that was little Willard Carroll Smith walking on that stage to face his demons. And he got caught in a moment that probably should have been hashed out in therapy, should have been hashed out in counseling. But I think Chris Rock came along and did just enough to push him over the edge. Like that, that Grandmaster Flash song, he was on the edge and he pushed him over the edge. And so when people say, oh, he's bullying, he wouldn't have done that if it was The Rock. If The Rock was hosting, he would. I think in that moment, if it was Andre the Giant, if it was King Kong who made that remark, Will Smith would have done the same thing. It just happened to be Chris.
I'm so glad that you said this, because I have been thinking this, especially since I've been listening to his book. Like, his first chapter was about fear, and he talks throughout about different fears that he's had to overcome, and just this crutching fear that he has had over his whole life. And I think about, like, that slap to me, it was almost like, y'all remember the three young girls that were kidnapped by the one guy, and I don't know if y'all remember, it was like in Ohio, and the one girl got away, and they were like, how'd you do it? Whatever. But we celebrate that, right? Because they were victims. We could see it, we know it. And to me, it was like Will's smack, or that moment was like the ultimate, like, I gotta do something. Like, I gotta protect. Like you said, because I never did it. And it was for him, it was like that moment, like that aha, like I gotta do it moment, where he finally conquered the fear. And I agree with you. I don't think it was Chris. I don't think it was just like tunnel vision. I got to do this at my age. I shouldn't still be afraid to say something to somebody. And
and if I could add on to that, I think that the way people are looking at it as him being the bigger person, like literally the physically bigger person, that he was the bully in that scenario. I think there's two things that people are discounting. Number one, that the impact of verbal abuse, the impact of that bullying isn't always going to be physical. A lot of times it's verbal. Especially if you put someone in a position to where that person has so much to lose that they don't want to do the thing that they don't want to do what he just did, because he's thinking about so much that he has to lose. If I know that you don't want to lose your job and this matters to you, you got bills to pay, mouths to feed, I can poke you on your job without crossing the line, without going to HR over something blatant that I do. I can actually mess with you every day, park my car in your space, eat your lunch at the refrigerator, just do little things to really push you over the edge. And that is still bullying, even if I'm smaller than you are, because I know that I have the system on my side. I have leverage that will stop me from really getting any real consequences from you. And Chris Rock has been using comedy as a shield, as an excuse to be able to do and say a lot of things to not only Will, but Black women in general, like just as a little jokey joke. But there's certain jokes that he himself would admit took on a life of its own. Like, say, for example, his Black people versus N-word joke. He said that he stopped doing that joke because it took a life of its own. Racists started using it and using it in a way that he didn't intend. So he understood that his comedy had cultural significance and power and influence on the general public's perception. Yet he'll stand up and do the most misogynoirous set about Black women. And he'll make these comments about Jada Pinkett. And this is somebody that you know socially. So they like they're strangers, you know them socially. And everybody say he didn't know about her alopecia. Come on now. She did a whole media tour.
I don't believe that either.
I don't believe it.
How did you know?
I think that's ridiculous. And I don't know if you heard us earlier, because people tried to give him an excuse as, the jokes, the monologues written, it's scripted, and a producer has actually come forward and said that part, they would not, first of all, they're not mentioning Jada and Will and nothing like that, because he's up for the Oscar. They know he's winning.
Right.
So they're not gonna do that. Nobody's writing that because they knew he was gonna win.
Right.
So the producer came forward and said, no, that was not, he did that on his own.
Right.
And so I agree with you. I think that just like you said, none of it should have ever happened. And I think there was intent behind it. And I think people need to recognize that. And I also think the reason why there are women who are on Will's side because of the misogyny that Chris has shown in his comedy sets. And also the specific joke that he made about her hair. He made a movie about good hair and the plights of Black women with their hair. And you go on national TV and make a joke about another woman. Like, so for a lot of Black women, they're like, we're not buying it. Like, we're fully aware.
We literally just had a Crown law passed for the protection of hair. And a part of the reason that happened, those lawmakers didn't just wake up one day and decide to do that on their own. They did it because enough women, enough Black women, enough people, but certainly Black men as well, but enough Black women thought it was worth fighting for. Day after day, week after week, year after year, worth losing their jobs for, whether they're in the military or working at Six Flags. A lot of them were actually fighting for or in school and not being able to walk for graduation. Seeing other people use so-called boxer braids, which ain't nothing but cornrows, and calling them something else, and using your styles, your looks, and being able to benefit from it, but you can't. That was a fight. That took a fight in order to make that happen. So you understand clearly the significance that this thing holds to people. But there's something that I think a lot of people missed, which is Chris knew just as well as anybody in that room what he was doing. Because, especially if we now know that the joke was unscripted, when he went through the crowd, acknowledging different people, and he singled them out, and he made the G.I. Jane joke. He said to Will, "Come on now, that was a good one. Like that was a good one." That to me is someone who had been told, someone who had been talked about, and said, "Do not do it." And he wanted to push the limit anyway, maybe because he was comfortable, maybe because he felt like Will couldn't do anything. Maybe he felt like deep down inside, like sometimes what white men will do is they'll come into my post and they'll start poking and poking and poking and being antagonistic. And in their minds, that poking and prodding is bonding. After annoying me for a while, they'll say, well, we were able to talk it out, like, we can bond and be buddies now. Bro, we're not being buddies. I'm about to delete all your comments and ban you. I only let you in here for engagement. And so he might have felt like he and Will were in a place where he could keep poking him because they've known of each other, or at least socially, for so long. So he immediately said, "Come on now, like, you got to give it to me. That was a good one." But it wasn't a good one because I told you not to mention it at all, and you just did it anyway. Mm-hmm. So people were saying, well, Will laughed at first and didn't move until Jada, he realized that Jada wasn't laughing. That's not true. I think most of these people talking about this have either never been in a fight, or at least not been in a fight as an adult, or never really witnessed a fight or a scenario where there's violence from start to finish. You might walk in on a fight, or maybe you hear a noise and you realize, oh, somebody fighting in the club. But I'm talking about from the beginning to the end, because there's times when that laughter is an awkward sort of reaction, is adrenaline, and you try to level yourself out. I've seen people laugh during the fight. While they're actually fighting, they'll laugh or smile during the fight. You're trying to keep yourself together. And especially if you know what you're about to do.
Mm-hmm. I thought the laugh was awkward, and I thought he was he's been in the business enough to know there are cameras on him, and it's awkward, and he's trying to control himself, and I'm trying to laugh this off, and then something just clicked, like, nah, I'm not doing it this time.
To me, I feel like while that could absolutely be the case, I've seen that sequence of events so many times. Like where I'm from, it's the one who's smiling. Like the one that's walking around, oh, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it. It's the guy who's sitting back smiling, shaking his head like, bro, all right, like, you need to relax, man. Like, that guy is about to get up and wreck shop. Mm-hmm. Or that girl, that woman, when whoever it is, male, female, whoever it is, once they start, taking off jewelry and I try to tell you, they know what they about to do. And in that moment, I feel like when he sat down, because they said, oh, he was smiling even after he did it. I'm like, then that should tell you right there that the smile wasn't an indication of him being amused. You get up and slap somebody in the face and walk away smiling, that's satisfaction. I'm not happy, I ain't amused. He sat down, and then when Chris pushed the issue, he needed to punctuate it twice. Now, here's one thing that again hasn't really been talked about, that I want people to stop doing. Okay, stop saying violence is not the answer, and I'll tell you why. Because it's as meaningless as just say no when it comes to drug abuse. Like, telling people just say no in no way, shape, or form gives them any information that they can use, doesn't help them in any way. It's like telling someone who's been paralyzed in an accident, like, hey, just walk. Telling someone who cannot speak, just talk. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. Mm-hmm. So now imagine you are a kid who's being bullied, okay? And you watch that whole sequence of events. And in your mind, you identify with Will Smith or Jada, whose disease was being mocked. And you've already talked to him. You know that he's talked to Chris Rock before. You know they've already tried silence. And you know what silence got them? Silence got them humiliated again, right there on the world stage in front of everyone at the Oscars. But you know what violence did? Violence got him sitting back in his seat, repeat twice, keep my wife's name out your mouth, and you know what the answer was? Okay, dude, I will.
Yep, he got the answer he wanted.
That's the answer he was looking for. So how you gonna tell somebody that violence ain't the answer when violence just got the answer he's been looking for over, how many, 4 years now? For years, I've been asking you to do this, and quietly, calmly asking you in one way, shape, or form to relax a little bit, bro. And you would not take me seriously. It was all still a joke until 10 seconds ago when I popped you in the face. And so when people see that, you see what I'm saying? That how force and violence and aggression does get results. And you know how we know that these people believe in that? Because I'm about to circle back to our last conversation. You know how I know that people actually do believe that violence works? Because we still whooping kids. You still whooping kids. You still using it for attitude adjustment. You still using it to correct behavior. You're still saying, and then this is how I caught a lot of people slipping. A lot of the people who are pro spanking kids, they'll say, well, I don't whoop them hard. I might just open hand pop them where it don't hurt, but just kind of correct them. Now, catch the same person in the conversation when I said, well, you know, he didn't punch Chris Rock in the face. He just open hand slapped him in the face. And it wasn't really like hard. And they'll say it wasn't how hard he hit him or whether or not it was painful. It's the humiliation. Word? So you don't
worried about Chris Rock's humiliation, but not Will's humiliation.
Tell it. And they ain't worried about the child's humiliation that you can pop in the mouth for sassy.
And they sure ain't worried about Jada. That was all the way out.
I heard so many people blaming Jada. You would think that Jada had some strings on his hands and his back, operating him like a
marionette. That's what I would like to go to, because to me, I've seen that a lot. That is so disgusting and disturbing to me.
Right.
And some people literally took it back to, they did a poster, like a flyer almost like, and she's on the flyer and it says, narcissistic, controlling, like all these different things. And so for me, I said, well, if she's that, Will is every bit of those same things. Like they've been married. I think it was ridiculous, but in the post, they basically said, this is his problem. She's her problem. And I was like, wait a minute, the man done wrote a whole book about trauma, but Jada's the problem?
You know what's interesting about that is when they're talking about Will Smith's accolades, achievement, money, fame, all the positive things about him, she gets no credit for it. All of the negative things about him, she gets all the blame. How can both of those things exist in the same space? So if I have so much control over him and everything is moving by the power of Jada, then why is it when y'all talk about the potential of them getting divorced, y'all keep talking about how she ain't going to deserve half and how what she is and isn't going to deserve and how all of that is undue and you know, she just basically seemed like she riding his coattail and all of his achievements and she just riding the wave. Oh, so you mean she's not influencing the work that he puts in? She's not influencing his craft, his art. He's not influencing any of those things. The only thing she influences are the negative things about him. And so what I'm sitting here saying is, how can both be true? So if I have a dog that's well trained, okay, you know that my dog is well trained. I can make my dog ride a bicycle, okay, and my dog bites you. I call it back right by my side. Is it possible that my well-trained dog bit you because I said so? Maybe I sick my dog on you. How do you know I didn't sick my dog on you? My dog don't do anything unless I tell it to. And my dog decided to go cross the street, bite you, and come back to me like it's all good. It's a reasonable theory that you made the dog do it because the dog only does what you tell it to do. Well, in this case, if Will only does what she tells him to do, how does that not include all of the things that he's achieved? But you don't want her to get in on any of that. You only want her to be to blame. And now here's the thing. Now, I will say this. I can't speak for their relationship, Will and Jada's relationship, like the inner workings of it. If the details that August said are true, and she confirmed a lot of it, okay? If that is the case, the context around that relationship to me is absolutely predatory. It's not okay. If you get someone in a weak space, dealing with death, dealing with sickness, dealing with depression, like someone in a really vulnerable space that whose life you came into as a motherly figure, that's even a friend of your child's, who doesn't know what's up, and then transition from that position of authority. It's why you never hear nothing but me dating a former student, because I came into your life as an authority. And so our bond was based on a power dynamic that was not level. And so when you transition from one thing to the next, it's problematic. Now, I don't know the exact dynamic, how it all worked out, but the way that she described it and the way that he described it, I thought it was not cool. But it was something that was done openly with knowledge, whatever, that if it's correct, between the two of them. That's not the same thing as cheating when your marriage is open for you to do that. Now, while I may have some ethical issues in regards to the context around it, I'm not sitting here judging her as a cheat, because open is open.
Well, why are men judging her as a cheat? Because I feel like in any relationship, we are, as women, we are expected to just roll with the punches if you cheat, if a man cheats. But when a woman cheats, the man is like, I can't forgive her. I can never forgive her. It's over.
Will Smith has been attached to, in Hollywood, 10 different, even when he did Suicide Squad, there was a rumor that he had been with one of his castmates.
Well, let me interrupt and say that, before you say that, so let's just be clear. We've been working a long time in industry. What they got going on, both of them do it, and it was not a secret.
Thank you. And it was something that was well known.
Yes.
Okay.
And they both have said it. He just said it recently again on Gail, talking to Gail. He said there's never been a situation that we went through that we didn't talk about, that we didn't know about.
Right. And see, that's the thing.
Have known this since like 2000, like literally have known this since like the early 2000s. Like this is not new information. The
thing is, I don't think that when generally when men talk about a woman cheating, okay, there was a line that Jay-Z had, I can't quote it exactly, where he was saying, you ain't had, like basically, I know I cheated on you, but you ain't had to get me back like that. Like, come on now. I mean, I know I did it to you, but you ain't had to do it to me. Mm-hmm. And that's how a lot of people, I've had conversations with, friends who've been cheated on. And in the conversation, it's almost like they switched into another person. Like, am I talking to another personality? They're like, bro, I was just with you last weekend when you took somebody else home. What are you talking about? Like, I'm like, if I didn't know you right now, I would really be whipping out the tissues, trying to console you. Like, oh, bro, man, like she did you like what? And you were far worse than you're even accusing her of being. And he's like, that ain't the point. Okay. That's not the point. And so that's what I'm saying is if you look at these men, they're looking at her as property. They're looking at it as an extension of themselves. And so that's why a lot of them, well, first of all, before I finish that thought, let me see, there's two things that are contradicting one another here. Okay, there's the first thing, which is you're looking at women as property and as an extension of yourself. And therefore, if she don't look good, you don't look good. That type of mentality, okay? Saying that you have to identify your value through your woman. Mm-hmm. Then at the same time, a lot of them are saying that he went too far standing up for the person who's supposed to be the measure of his value. So which one is it? Am I not supposed to go all in to protect the person that you say is my pride and glory? Mm-hmm. This is supposed to be that. So if somebody comes after her, I got to take that personally. Ain't that what you said? And then they'll say, well, she don't deserve it. She don't deserve him going to bat for that. Okay, but I thought you said that it was a matter of principle, meaning whatever we got going on together, if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm right in public. So we gonna ride together, but we gonna handle them. Now I can say what I want to about my brother, my father, my sister, my whoever, because we team us. You ain't on the team. So what you're saying to me is suddenly she ain't on the team. Will was supposed to just sit there and take that because she is undeserving. But at the same time, identify with it when she's sleeping with someone else. Well, if she's undeserving of my protection and she's not underneath my wing, then why am I worried about her in August?
Yeah, people just, they put too much, they overlapping that situation with this, and that
It's
hasn't.
disgusting.
I mean, can we just be honest here?
You can't, it's like you can't even do that because they're married and they decided they're together. So you can't, like, that part to me shouldn't have even come up or shouldn't even be a part of this.
Ironically, the things that people are saying, and which is what I always say, which is clearly it's not a direct cause of what has happened about retaliation. But the reality of it is you're putting this out into the universe, and this is the problem. The hatefulness, the vindictiveness, the viciousness of words matter, and they hurt people, and people react to those words. And it's like we're in this endless cycle that we do it over and over and over again. And then when something tragic happens, like a kid getting bullied at school and he kills himself, or a kid getting bullied and he goes and shoots up the school, we want to sit and wonder why. I don't understand. But
we got 1 minute left. We got 1 minute left. Can you please take us out with some closing words about this incident? Your thoughts on it before we leave.
And moving forward out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that this incident is something that is very telling, that people keep referring to the assault. Well, assault is actually a verbal crime. Battery is the one that's physical. So if you can relate to how assault itself can be something that can drive someone to the edge or punish someone, if you have an understanding of how words can hurt, even though in this instance it was a physical response to something verbal, the physical response was not something that was really all that painful, but we don't know how deep those words cut, just because it wasn't something that our eyes could see. That cut happens on the inside. That slap happened on the inside. And I just think that it's not a false equivalence for us to be able to say that our words and our actions should be in alignment with one another, and we should be able to give account for both. And that's what this calls for, is accountability. Yes, Will should give account for what he did, but Chris should be man enough to give account for what he said. He might not apologize to Will because Will was on the receiving end. Will was on the giving end of something that humiliated him. But Chris, you were on the giving end of something that humiliated Jada. And I feel like as people saying, hey, Will should man up and be accountable, I feel like Chris owes Jada an apology as well, so that everyone can understand that all these things have value. That, and Black men, get in some counseling, get in some therapy, get in some counseling, talk to somebody. Talk to someone.
Yes,
we gotta,
like Jada said, that part.
let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Thank you so much for shining some light on this. It was really enlightening. You'll be back. It'll be some more drama.
Hopefully nobody slap anybody else this week.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Awesome.
Bye.
You're watching Soul Sisters on Pure Soul, powered by Isaac Hayes on Dash Radio.